There are moments in life that touch the deepest corners of our hearts, moments that remind us that miracles don't always wear crowns or come from palaces. Sometimes, they rise from the dust, barefoot, hungry, but with a light that can blind the world. This is one such story, the story of Juan, a poor Filipino boy from the crowded streets of Manila, whose voice reached across oceans, touched millions, and melted even the toughest heart, Simon Cowell's. Before we begin, if you believe kindness and talent can change lives, then stay with us till the end. Because today, you're about to witness a story that will restore your faith in humanity. The story begins in the narrow alleys of Manila. The sun had just risen over the rusted rooftops. Street vendors shouted, tricycles honked, and barefoot children ran through puddles laughing. Among them was Juan, a thin boy with messy hair and a smile that hid 1,000 tears. His clothes were worn, his slippers broken, and yet, every morning, he carried a small dream that burned brighter than anything else, to sing. Juan's mother, Maria, worked from sunrise to sunset washing clothes for neighbors. His father had left when he was only 4. Every evening, after helping his mother hang clothes and collect empty bottles to sell, Juan would sit by the small river and sing softly to the water. His voice was fragile but beautiful, pure, raw, and full of pain. The locals would often stop and listen. Some would smile, some would cry. They would say, "Juan, you have an angel's voice." But he never believed them. For him, it was just a way to forget hunger. One rainy evening, Maria fell sick. Juan sat beside her, holding her cold hands. "Mama, when I grow up, I'll buy you a big house," he said, his eyes glistening with tears. She smiled weakly. "My son, dreams are free. Never stop dreaming." Those were her last words that night before she closed her eyes forever. Juan was just 11. The next morning, the sun rose, but for Juan, the world had turned dark. He had no family left, no home. For weeks, he wandered the streets of Manila, sleeping under bridges, singing for coins. His only friend was an old man named Lito, who sold roasted corn. Lito would give Juan leftovers and listen to him sing every night. One day he said, "Juan, why don't you try your luck? There's this show called America's Got Talent. Maybe they'll see what I see." Juan laughed sadly. "I can't even afford shoes, how can I go to America?" But fate was listening. Months later, a local charity visited their area, filming street kids for a documentary. They heard Juan singing near a broken wall, his voice echoing through the alley. The crew stopped, mesmerized. One of them asked, "Boy, what's your name?" "Juan," he said shyly. They recorded him and later uploaded his singing clip online. Within days, it went viral. Millions watched, shared, and cried. The video reached an AGT producer in Los Angeles. And that's how the impossible began to happen. A week later, Juan received a call through the charity center. They told him he'd been invited to audition for America's Got Talent. He didn't understand at first. America, me, he thought it was a joke. But when they handed him the official letter, his hands trembled. The world suddenly didn't seem so small anymore. The charity helped him get a passport, clothes, and a ticket. As the plane lifted from Manila's airport, Juan pressed his face against the window, tears rolling down his cheeks. The city lights below looked like stars scattered across the earth. "Mama," he whispered, "I'm going to sing for you." When Juan arrived in Los Angeles, everything felt unreal. The tall buildings, the bright lights, the people rushing everywhere. He was nervous, holding a small backpack with all he owned, a photo of his mother and an old t-shirt she had sewn for him. As he stood backstage at AGT, surrounded by other contestants with fancy outfits and confident smiles, Juan felt invisible. He was small, shy, and barefoot inside his new sneakers. But his heart, that was unbreakable. The host asked him gently, "Are you ready?" Juan nodded, even though his legs were shaking. The moment his name was called, he walked onto the massive stage. The crowd was huge, the lights blinding. Simon Cowell, Sofia Vergara, Heidi Klum, and Howie Mandel sat before him. Simon looked at him curiously. "Hello, young man. What's your name?" "My name is Juan, sir. I'm from Manila, Philippines." The audience cheered. Simon smiled slightly. "And how old are you?" "I'm 12. 12. And what are you going to do for us today?" "I'm going to sing, sir." Simon leaned back. "All right, Juan. The stage is yours." Juan took a deep breath, closed his eyes, and remembered his mother's words, "Never stop dreaming." The music began. It was a slow piano version of "You Raise Me Up." His voice trembled at first, soft and unsure, but as he reached the chorus, something magical happened. The emotion, the pain, the purity, it all exploded into one breathtaking moment. The crowd went silent. Every note carried the story of his life, hunger, love, loss, and hope. By the time he finished, there wasn't a single dry eye in the audience. Simon looked stunned. Heidi covered her mouth. Sophia wiped a tear. Howie whispered, "Wow." The crowd erupted into applause, standing, cheering, clapping, crying. Juan stood frozen, overwhelmed. And then, something unbelievable happened. Simon Cowell stood up, walked toward the golden buzzer, and with a soft smile, pressed it. The golden confetti rained down like heaven's blessing. Juan covered his face, crying uncontrollably. The audience screamed his name. Simon walked onto the stage, knelt beside him, and said into the mic, "Juan, I've been doing this for many years. I've heard many voices, but what you just did, that came from the soul. You reminded us why music exists. You deserve this." Juan looked at him through tears, unable to speak. He whispered, "Thank you, sir. This is for my mama." Simon placed a hand on his shoulder. She'd be proud. That moment spread across the internet like wildfire. News outlets from every country wrote about the poor Filipino boy who melted Simon Cowell's heart. His audition became one of the most watched videos in AGT history. People around the world donated to help him. A famous music producer offered him a contract. But Juan didn't forget where he came from. After the show, he called Lito in Manila. "Tate Lito, I did it." He cried over the phone. The old man's voice cracked. "I knew you would, son. You always had it in you." The charity that once helped him now received donations from fans inspired by his story. Juan made sure to send most of his earnings back home to build a small shelter for street children. He called it Maria's Home, after his mother. Weeks passed, and Juan returned to perform again in the AGT semifinals. This time, he sang an original song he had written about his life called Voice in the Rain. The lyrics spoke about losing everything but never losing hope. As he sang, the camera caught Simon's eyes glistening again. When he finished, Simon stood and said, "Juan, you are proof that talent doesn't belong to the rich. It belongs to the brave." Juan didn't win the season, but he won the world's heart. His story became a symbol of hope for millions of kids who had nothing but dreams. Back in Manila, the small alleys that once echoed his lonely songs now played his music on every radio. Street kids would sing his name, mothers would tell their children about the boy who made the world listen. Months later, Juan returned home. As he stepped out of the airport, cameras flashed, reporters cheered, and children ran toward him. But he didn't go to a hotel or fancy show. He went straight to the same river where he used to sing to the water. He sat there quietly, tears flowing down his cheeks. "Mama," he whispered, "I made it. I sang for you." And the world heard. Behind him, children gathered, asking him to sing. He smiled and began softly singing, "You raise me up," again. The sun dipped behind the clouds, casting a golden light over the water. The same golden color as the confetti that had once fallen from the sky. From that day, Juan used his fame to fund music classes for poor kids. He said in every interview, "Music saved me. I want it to save others too." He traveled to different schools, sharing his story, performing, hugging kids who reminded him of himself. In every face, he saw a dream waiting to be believed. Simon Cowell invited him again as a guest in the next AGT season. When he walked on stage, the audience gave him a thunderous welcome. Simon introduced him with pride, "Ladies and gentlemen, the boy who reminded us all what true talent is, Juan from the Philippines." Juan sang again, but this time, not as a contestant, as an artist. His mother's photo was displayed on the screen behind him. The song ended with a standing ovation that lasted several minutes. After the show, Simon said, "When I pressed that golden buzzer, I thought I was giving you a chance. But really, you gave us something priceless, you reminded us to feel." Juan smiled, "Thank you, sir. I just wanted the world to know that even the poorest heart can carry the richest song." Years passed. Juan continued to inspire millions. He built a small foundation in Manila for orphans who loved music. He never forgot the streets he came from, the hunger he had felt, or the promise he made to his mother. Every year, on her death anniversary, he would go back to that river, place flowers on the water, and sing. The locals would gather silently, listening to the boy who turned pain into melody. One evening, a journalist asked him, "Juan, what keeps you going?" He smiled gently, "Love. My mother's love. The love of strangers who believed in me. When you've known hunger, kindness tastes sweeter. When you've known silence, music feels louder." The journalist asked, "What would you tell kids who are struggling like you once did?" Juan looked at the camera and said, "Never let your circumstances silence your dream. You might be poor, you might be alone, but if you keep your heart pure and your faith strong, the world will one day hear your song." And that became his life's message. His voice continued to echo across continents, in concerts, on TV, and in millions of hearts. But if you ever visit Manila at sunset, and walk by the riverside, you might still hear a faint voice singing softly through the breeze. It's the same song, the same hope, the same boy who believed, and made the world believe with him. Because in the end, Juan's story isn't just about talent. It's about faith, love, and the magic that happens when the smallest dream refuses to die. So whenever life feels unfair, whenever your dreams seem too far, remember the barefoot boy from Manila who sang through his tears and reached the stars. He had nothing, but he gave the world everything. And maybe, just maybe, that's the true meaning of greatness. If this story touched your heart, don't forget, somewhere out there, another Juan is waiting for someone to believe in him. And that someone could be you.